This is the second book of the Kings. This is going to be part 4, chapter 16. I'm going to talk about something really quick before I get started. So I was reading these. I read like 2 chapters and then I got interrupted. And unfortunately, when that happens, I have to start over again because I'm not able to pause and continue. So, but what I want you to think about as we read this is think about how it's, again, and in the Bible it talks about, it's about when the people, God's people, backslide and get pulled to other other rituals and gods of the world, right? That are they're not our God, basically ungodly. They're not our God, right? And so and I was just, when I was reading it, I was finding it interesting how we get so easily pulled away from God, and then what happens is calamity befalls us, like when we get pulled away from our God. And then it's like, there's like, I guess it could be kind of cliche how everybody always says, like, oh, when everybody's doing bad, that's when you go back to God and say, I'm sorry, God, please help me, And that is true. It's a very true saying. But I think what we need to learn from this, and I know God has given me scripture before about that, about, realizing that you're getting pulled away and don't, and overcome that, right? Like, resist the devil, renounce the evil, don't let it pull you back to those ways, right? Or to another doctrine's ways, or another, to other gods, because our God is so wonderful. And I think that might be the reason why everybody gets pulled away from God, because God is the number one God, right? King of kings, Lord of lords. He's number one. And the other, maybe other people that some people think they're gods, something, and that's it's not good to go into that place like Satan did. Satan thought that he could be better than God who created everything, and he got cast out, and I think sometimes I see that in the world where people think they're gods, and so you gotta be very careful thinking that mindset, because to think, like when they get into thinking that way, they get on that level where Satan was, and it's not a good place, and God is our Father. God is creator of all. He is in charge. He is the one, and I don't know, but I just think it's interesting how we can get very pulled away easily, and we gotta refrain from that. Like when we catch that happening, to stop that and rebuke it or renounce it or resist the devil, and like just keep sticking to God. Keep, ask God to forgive you for that, and just go back to God and continually following his ways. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to mess up day to day. Nobody's perfect, but we can try to be, we can try every day to be like Jesus, and follow everything, and it's not going to be easy, but we have the most superb God, the best God ever. And when you seek God with your whole heart, your whole mind, body, soul, strength, everything that you can give for God, you better believe God sees that, and he's gonna help you, even when you don't even ask for help. He will help you. Like, he knows what you need, and he knows what's good for you, and he'd be well pleased with you, you know. And you know, it's kind of like the story with Job. We haven't even read that one yet, but we'll read that one. And it's about Job. You know, Job was, you know, so many terrible things happened to him, but he still kept praising God. He didn't let that stop him. He knew God. He just knew. He, with all his mind, body, soul, and strength, he believed in God. He didn't like what was happening to him. Of course, nobody would, but he never lost faith in God. And that's why God was so well pleased with him. And that is why Satan went after him, because Satan didn't like it. You know, Satan wanted to destroy. That's what Satan does. He tries to destroy God's people. And so, you know, but you just gotta hang on to God. You just tell God, even if you see something bad happen in your life and you know you've been living right and doing right, you just call up to God. You say, call your dad. It's like, Dad, look at this unfair stuff happening to me, you know, or like, look what's happening. Please help me, you know, or just whatever, however you want, you talk and pray to God. You know, you just seek to God, and you better believe God be coming down there, coming after that devil. And you know, that's all. So when I read through this, just think about that. When it you know, and it's a pattern throughout history about how God's people do that. We follow God, and then the worldly pleasures and stuff, you know, try to tempt us away from God. And it works a lot of times, you know. It tempts people away, you know. And then you forget the goodness of God when you get tempted away. And that's what you don't, it's very hard. Don't let it, when you notice it happening, you know, renounce it, rebuke it, resist it, and come back to God and just pray to God. Even if you feel like you don't have the strength to do it, ask God to give you strength to resist, renounce, you know, rebuke all the evil away from you, because you want to steadfast stay with God wholeheartedly. You want to follow him, because the times right now, I mean, you hear a lot of people preaching about end times, and you hear about all that's happening in the world. I mean, even Jewish people feel that the end time is coming too, you know. And so you see this, like, people, you know, so you gotta be ready, and don't let the devil trick you out of your place in heaven. Don't let him do it. That's what he's trying to do. He's like in competition with God. God's trying to save us, and Satan is trying to take us. And don't let him take your soul. Don't let him. You know, Satan don't give no hoot about none of us. You know, he don't care. He'll offer you whatever you like he tried to do to Jesus. But God can do that for you. God can give you the desires of your heart. He will, you know, he knows what you want and need. He knows everything. And so just stick with God. Don't let other people's gods or rituals or anything pull you away, because it's false, and it's gonna mess you up. And it's gonna mess you up from entering heaven, like it could, you know, if you don't. I mean, I don't know how that all works with, because I believe that everybody has this personal relationship with God, because he knew all of us separately before we were in our mother's womb, right? So he knows us. He knows our hearts. He knows what we want. He knows everything about us. He examines us. He knows. So I think that as long as you go back to God and you renounce the enemy, renounce the evil, just keep it out of your life, you know. And you know, you do see a lot of people who do evil or ungodly, you see them prosper in life. You see them do very well and have many things. But you know what they don't have is they don't have God. So they could be blessed on earth, but to lose their soul, to lose their place in heaven, like that's craziness to me. I think no way. I would rather be poor and humble than to be rich and without God. To have, or even just to have things. If you are without God, you're in big trouble. Is all. It's like, just stick with God. All right, I'm sorry. I talk a lot sometimes when I get really passionate about it. I was reading this and that really spoke to me. Like, that's what is happening, is that the world pulls us from God. And that's what, I believe that's what, if you have ever had your heart broken, I think that's what God feels like. His heart gets broken when he loves us, and when we pull away from him and leave him, like, that's heartbreak to him, because God loves us. He got an unconditional love for us, and so I can only imagine what God must feel. Like, we feel things, but can you imagine God? It feels it more intensely because he has so many souls. Like, we just feel what's happening with us, but God feels it with all. He has that abundance feeling with all. So no wonder, I'm sure he cries for us. And because I felt that. I felt like when I had something happen in my life and I cried, I felt like God cried with me. It was like is most likely like a loving parent that sees their children hurt in some way and crying out, and then he just basically comforts and cries with you. And that's how loving our God is. That is, I have that personal experience, so I can promise you that's how he loves. Our God is so amazing. I would never walk away. I would recommend to never walk away from God. Don't, with all your might, hang on to God. Even if the enemy is pulling you and persuading you and even trying to trick you. Because that's what's happening in the world. They trick people. It's like they almost brainwash people away, and you better believe God sees that and knows what's happening, and they're in big trouble for doing that stuff. But okay, I will stop and we'll start this new part. So it's the second book of Kings, and this is part 4, chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord his God, as his father David had done, but he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. Indeed, he made his son pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to make war. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time Rezin, king of Syria, captured Elath from Syria, and drove the men of Judah from Elath. Then the Edomites went to Elath, and dwell there to this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel, who rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent it as a present to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria heeded him, for the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and took it, carried its people captive to Kir, and killed Rezin. Now King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus. And King Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the design of the altar and its pattern, according to all its workmanship. Then Urijah the priest built an altar according to all the king Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Urijah the priest made it before King Ahaz came back from Damascus. And when the king came back from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached the altar and made offerings on it. So he burned his burnt offering and his grain offering, and he poured his drink offering and sprinkled the blood of his peace offering on the altar. He also brought the bronze altar which was before the Lord from the front of the temple, from between the new altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the new altar. Then King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, on the great new altar burn the morning burnt offering, the evening grain offering, the king's burnt sacrifice, and his grain offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, their grain offering and their drink offerings, and sprinkle on it all the blood of the burnt offering, and all the blood of the sacrifice. And the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. Thus did Urijah the priest, according to all that King Ahaz commanded. And King Ahaz cut off the panels of the carts, and removed the lavers from them. And he took down the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it, and put it on a pavement of stones. Also he removed the Sabbath pavilion, which they had built in the temple, and he removed the king's outer entrance from the house of the Lord on account of the king of Assyria. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Ahaz rested with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Then Hezekiah his son reigned in his place. Chapter 17. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea the son of Elah became king of Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against him, and Hoshea became his vessel, and paid him tribute money. And the king of Assyria uncovered a conspiracy by Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to Tuso, king of Egypt, and brought no tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up, and bound him in prison. Now the king of Assyria went throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria, and besieged it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away to Assyria, and placed them in Halah, and by the Habar, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Mendes. For so it was, or that one might say Mendes. It's with an S. It's M-E-D-E-Z, M-E-D-E-S, Mendes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And they had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the nations whom the Lord had cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. Also the children of Israel secretly did against the Lord their God things that were not right, and they built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and wooden images on every high hill and under every green tree. There they burned incense on all the high places, like the nations whom the Lord had carried away before them. And they did wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served idols, of which the Lord had said to them, "You shall not do this thing." Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all his prophets every year, saying, "Turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets." Nevertheless, they would not hear, but stiffened their necks like the necks of their fathers, who did not believe in the Lord their God. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he had made with their fathers, and his testimonies, which he had testified against them. They followed idols, became idolaters, and went after the nations who were all around them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. So they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, made for themselves a molded image, 2 calves, made a wooden image, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire. They practiced witchcraft and soothsaying, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them from his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah alone. Also Judah did not keep the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. And the Lord rejected all the descendants of Israel, afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of plunderers, until he had cast them from his sight. For he tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son Nebat king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord, and made them commit a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight. And he had said by all his servants the prophets. So Israel was carried away from their own land to Assyria, as it is to this day. Then the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in its cities. And it was so at the beginning of their dwelling there, that they did not fear the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, "The nations whom you have removed and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the rituals of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and indeed they are killing them, because they do not know the rituals of the God of the land." Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, "Send there one of the priests whom you brought from there. Let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the rituals of the God of the land." Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. However, every nation continued to make gods of its own, and put them in the shrines on high places, which the Samaritans had made, every nation in the cities where they dwelt. The men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth. The men of Cuth made Nergal. The men of Hamath made Ashima. And the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak. And the Sephirites burned their children in fire to Adron-Melech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord, and from every class they appointed for themselves priests of the high places, who sacrificed for them in the shrines of the high places. They feared the Lord, yet served their own gods, according to the rituals of the nations from among who were carried away. To this day they continue practicing the former rituals, They do not fear the Lord, nor do they follow their statutes or their ordinances, or the law of the commandment which the Lord had commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord had made a covenant and charged them, saying, you shall not fear other gods, nor bow down to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord who brought you up from the land of Egypt with great power and an outstretched arm, him you shall fear, him you shall worship, and to him you shall offer sacrifice. And the statutes, the ordinances, the law, and the commandments which he wrote for you, you shall be careful to observe forever. You shall not fear other gods. And the covenant that I have made with you, you shall not forget, nor shall you fear other gods. But the Lord your God, you shall fear, and he will deliver you from the hand of all your enemies. However, they did not obey, but they followed their former rituals. So these nations feared the Lord, yet served their carved images. Also, their children and their children's children have continued doing as their fathers did, even to this day. Alright, I'm going to pause there and I will do part 5. Thank you for listening and God bless you.